Genghis Khan, the man who invented the modern world. History remembers him as a monster, a whirlwind of horsemen who turned cities into graveyards and redirected rivers to erase empires from the map. To some, he is the definition of destruction, but to others, he was a visionary who tore down the old, stagnant walls of the medieval world to build the first truly global society. This is the story of Temujin, the boy who was abandoned to starve on the steppes of Mongolia, and who rose to become Genghis Khan, the great Khan of the greatest land empire in human history. To understand the scale of what he achieved, you have to realize that when Temujin was born, Mongolia didn't exist. There was no nation, only a collection of warring tribes caught in a cycle of blood feuds, kidnapping, and poverty. When Temujin was just 9 years old, his father was poisoned by a rival tribe. His own clan abandoned him, his mother and his siblings, leaving them to survive on roots and rodents in the harsh Siberian winter. This is where the legend begins. Most people broken by such a childhood would have vanished into history. Instead, Temujin learned the ultimate lesson of survival. Merit is more important than bloodline. In the aristocratic world of the 12th century, where you were born determined your worth. Temujin rejected that. As he began to gather followers, he promoted men based on their loyalty and their skill in battle, not their family name. He was building a meritocracy in a world of kings. By the time he unified the tribes in 1206 and took the title Genghis Khan, he had created the most disciplined military machine the world had ever seen. The Mongol army wasn't just a horde. It was a masterpiece of logistics and psychological warfare. They could travel 70 miles a day a speed that wouldn't be matched by any army until the invention of the motor engine. Each soldier had a string of 5 horses, allowing them to swap mounts and keep moving without stopping. They were a ghost army appearing out of nowhere, striking with terrifying precision and vanishing before the enemy could regroup. But Genghis Khan knew that conquest was only the first step. To keep an empire, you have to make it profitable. And this is where the monster becomes a modernizer. As the Mongols conquered the Silk Road, they did something revolutionary. They made it safe. For the first time in history, a traveler could walk from the Mediterranean to the Pacific Ocean with a golden plate on their head and never fear being robbed. This period, known as the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace, triggered an explosion of global trade. The Mongols were obsessed with the exchange of knowledge. They didn't care for religion or philosophy, but they cared about what worked. They moved Chinese doctors to Persia, Persian astronomers to China, and European merchants to the heart of Asia. Under the Mongols, the world began to share technologies that would eventually trigger the Renaissance. Gunpowder, the compass, and the printing press. He created the first international postal system. He granted total religious freedom at a time when Europe was drowning in crusades. He abolished torture as a matter of law. He was a man of extreme contradictions, a leader who could order the execution of an entire city in the morning and spend the afternoon discussing philosophy with a Taoist monk. Beyond the borders of his empire, the great Khan's influence acted as a catalyst for a global administrative revolution. He realized that a massive territory could not be governed by the sword alone, so he pioneered a system of census-taking and standardized weights and measures. This wasn't merely about taxation, it was about creating a common language for commerce. By establishing the Yasa, a secret code of laws, he imposed a universal legal framework over dozens of disparate cultures. This legalism provided a predictable environment for merchants and peasants alike. The Mongol communication network, the YAM, served as the nervous system of this new world order. With post stations situated every 25 miles, riders could relay messages across the vastness of Eurasia with a speed that defied the limits of the era. It was a medieval precursor to the telegraph, ensuring that a decree issued in the capital of Karakoram could reach the fringes of Europe or the coast of China in a matter of weeks. This connectivity didn't just move military orders, it moved ideas. Perhaps most striking was the Mongol approach to urban planning and demographics. While they were famously nomadic, their conquests forced a massive migration of artisans and intellectuals. When the Mongols took a city, they frequently spared the lives of engineers, weavers, and scribes, forcibly relocating them to parts of the empire where their skills were most needed. This brain drain in reverse resulted in a unique architectural and artistic synthesis. Blue and white porcelain, often considered quintessentially Chinese, was actually born from this era, combining Persian cobalt with Chinese ceramic techniques. Even the Khan's environmental and biological impact remains etched into the planet's history. Recent studies suggest that the scale of the Mongol conquests, which led to the depopulation of vast agricultural regions, allowed forests to reclaim farmland on a massive scale. This unintentional regreening of the earth was significant enough to lower global carbon levels. On a more intimate level, his genetic legacy is unparalleled. It is estimated that millions of men living today are direct descendants of the great Khan. He did not just change the maps, he changed the very DNA of the human race. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, he didn't leave behind a monument or a massive tomb. In fact, his burial site remains one of the greatest mysteries in history, as his funeral escort killed anyone they met on the path to ensure he would never be found. He didn't want a monument. He wanted a legacy. He left his heirs an empire that covered nearly 12 million contiguous square miles. He had connected the East and the West so thoroughly that the world would never be truly disconnected again. We often think of the modern world as a product of the European age of discovery, but the blueprints were drawn centuries earlier by a man who started with nothing but a bow and a horse. The story of Genghis Khan isn't just a story of war. It is a story of how a single person's will can reshape the very chemistry of human civilization. He was the great accelerator of history, a man who forcibly dragged the medieval world out of its isolated silos and into the light of a connected, complex, and irrevocably modern reality. We are still living in the world he helped create, a world where ideas, goods, and people move across borders for better or for worse.